All right, let's dive in. Today, we're talking about how websites go from being just, static pages to the interactive experiences we use every single day. We're going to look at the magic that makes the web come alive.
Seriously, think about it for a second. You click a button, something happens. You hover your mouse over a menu, and it drops down. You start typing in a search bar, and suggestions pop up. That's not magic, right? It's code. But how does a website know what you're doing? How does it know how to react? That's exactly what we're going to unpack.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll get on the same page about what an interactive web really is. Then we'll look at the old school, kind of complicated way of listening for user actions. And that's when we'll introduce the hero of our story, jQuery. We'll break down its super powerful but simple syntax, and then we'll see it in action.
You know, way back in the early days of the web, websites were pretty much just digital documents, kind of like a Word doc, but online. You could read it, and that's about it. But today we expect so much more. We don't just read the web, we do things on it. We expect pages to respond to us instantly, without having to reload all the time. That leap from static to dynamic, that's all about interactivity.
Okay, so the key to all of this is a concept called an event. An event is basically just a signal that something happened. You click your mouse, that's an event. You move your mouse over a picture, that's another event. Even the browser finishing loading the page is an event. Think of these as the triggers that our code is waiting for.
So, how do we actually listen for these triggers? Well, the traditional way is by using what developers call vanilla JavaScript. That just means plain, standard JavaScript with no extra tools or libraries. And look, it's super powerful, but it can get a little wordy, a little complicated. And here are the raw building blocks of that communication. We have specific names for everything. OnClick is for a mouse click, OnKeyDown for when you press a key, and OnLoad for when the page is good to go. These are the specific signals our code needs to keep an ear out for.
And this is a perfect example of the old school way of doing things. You'd actually write your JavaScript code right inside the HTML. I mean, look at that onClick attribute. It works for sure, but it is messy. You're mixing the structure of your page with its behavior. And on a big website, oh man, that becomes a total nightmare to manage.
So all this complexity and messiness created a huge opening for a better way. And then, in 2006, this thing called jQuery came along and just completely changed the game. It was a JavaScript library built on a really simple but revolutionary idea.
This was their tagline, and it is perfect. It captures the entire philosophy. The whole point was to take these common tasks that used to require tons of complicated JavaScript code and boil them down into simple, clean commands that you could fire off with just a single line.
And boom, here is that aha moment. On the left, you've got the vanilla JavaScript way. Find an element by its ID, then get its inner HTML property, then set it to something new. It's a whole process. Now look at the right, jQuery. Select all paragraphs and hide them. It's clean, it's readable, it's exactly what write less, do more means in the real world.
And it wasn't just about writing less code. jQuery absolutely exploded because it solved real problems developers had every day. A huge one was browser compatibility. Back then, getting your code to work on Internet Explorer and Firefox and Chrome was a total headache. jQuery just handled it for you. It was a game changer. Throw in easy animations and powerful tools, and it's really no surprise that huge companies like Google and Netflix got on board.
Okay, so we know it's powerful, we know it's simple, but how does the magic actually work? Let's take a quick look at its core syntax, because it's actually incredibly consistent and easy to pick up.
It really all comes down to these three little parts. First, you've got the $sign. That's just a shortcut to say, hey, jQuery, I'm talking to you. Then, inside the parentheses, you put your selector. That's who you want to talk to on the page. And finally, you add a dot and an action. That's what you want to do. So you select something, and then you do something to it. That's it.
And that middle part, the selector, is where jQuery gets its superpowers. I mean, look at how flexible this is. You can grab elements by their tag, like all the paragraphs. You can grab one specific element by its ID using the little hash symbol, or grab a whole group of elements that share a class using a period. You can even get super specific and target things like the first item in every list. It gives you this incredible precision to grab exactly what you need on the page.
All right, enough theory. We get the syntax. Now for the fun part. How do we actually use this to build all those cool interactive features we were talking about earlier? Let's put this thing to work.
Well, first things first, getting it into your project couldn't be easier. You might think you have to download files and do some complex setup. Nope. You just add one single line of code to your HTML.
That's it. It points to a copy of jQuery hosted by companies like Google or Microsoft, so it loads super fast for your users.
And once that one line is in there, you have this entire toolkit at your command. You can change text on the fly, mess with CSS styles, easily handle all those user clicks and hovers, create slick animations. You can even load data from a server without ever having to refresh the page. It's the whole shebang.
So let's look at a super common example. This code is setting up two listeners. The first line is basically saying, hey, find the thing with the ID hide, and when someone clicks it, go find all the paragraphs on the page and hide them. The second line does the exact same thing, but for the show button. It's so clear and readable, right?
But of course, with jQuery, there's almost always an even simpler way. Why have separate functions for hide and show when one will do? The .toggle method is smart. It checks if the thing is visible, and if it is, it hides it. If it's hidden, it shows it. One line instead of two. That is the write less, do more philosophy right there.
Okay, now this one is a crucial pro tip. What happens if your code tries to find a paragraph to hide, but the browser hasn't even loaded that paragraph yet? You get an error. To stop that from happening, jQuery gives us this amazing little wrapper, document.ready function. Any code you stick inside this function is guaranteed to wait until the entire page is loaded and ready. It prevents so many bugs.
So jQuery took this really complex, sometimes frustrating job of making websites interactive and made it simple, powerful, and honestly fun. It was a true revolution for web development. And that kind of leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? In a world where the web is only getting more complex, what's going to be the next great simplifier? What is the next jQuery?